review series don't grow on trees. I know, shocking, right? But someone has to write them, and record them, and edit them, and then post them. I know peeks behind the curtains have always been fascinating to me, and I thought that after 156 reviews of this great series that it might be kind of fun to let you peek behind my curtain and see how the Signpost Up Ahead was created, step by step, as we walk through the creation process. In this featurette, very originally titled, The Making of the Signpost Up Ahead. Well, as one might have gathered, the first step, of course, is to watch the episode in question. Now, with very, very few exceptions, I have seen all of these episodes before. I know the big hits, big moments, big highlights of the episode. And so what I'll do is I'll flash through the episode and find select scenes that are significant. Once I've seen the episode, obviously, the next step, of course, is to start writing the review. Now you can see here, I use the most common word processor probably that anyone uses, Microsoft Word. My first step is to write in the facts of the episode, the title, the author, the director, that kind of thing, and the stars. My next step is to come up with the scenes I'm going to use for the review, the special video clips. And my target number for this, in terms of seconds, is 270. That equals 4.5 minutes. I decided on that number pretty early on, somewhere in the late reviews of the first season, and I've stuck to it since. I always think creativity is helped, not hindered, by having a limit. And knowing exactly how much time I had to show clips of allowed me to know what I needed to write for. Now when I first started writing scripts for the show, I actually wrote the script before any clips were chosen and then grabbed the clips as they became relevant in the paragraphs. Later on, completely reversed this process and grabbed the clips first, which greatly reduced writing time because I knew exactly what beats to hit in terms of what clips I was showing. So now the script's written, and for a typical review of this show, my usual word count was somewhere in the 1,050 to 1,100 word count. That just was kind of the sweet spot. That equals, depending on exact speed and enunciation and all of that and dramatic pauses, about 6 to 7 minutes of audio. Now, of course, I jump into the audio editing process, and for this I use a software called Sony SoundForge, which I've used for a long time. It's a single-track audio editor that I've utilized for many things, including music cutting for my choreography and dance-related career. After the audio is recorded, then I simply listen back to it in its entirety and edit out all of the flubs and mistakes, and there is a few, depending on the style of episode. You might have noticed every so often I leave myself really long gaps. Not just natural pauses in the words, but longer than normal. Here I'm literally counting to 3 Mississippi. And what I use that for is when I go to finally do the video editing, I've left myself clear and obvious gaps, which I delete and serve as markers for where the video clips will end up going in. That way, I can visually see where I stop talking and then when I start up again, without having to listen back to the audio a third time while I'm doing the video editing process. This is extremely helpful and speeds up the process immensely. Once the entire audio clip has been edited through, I go back and just look at the overall time. I tend to aim for the audio clip to not go over 7 minutes. This way, the entire presentation is somewhere in the ballpark between 10.5 minutes to 11.5 minutes, which for me is sort of the sweet spot in terms of holding attention and making sure there's a nice balance between giving interesting information about the episode, but not rambling on unnecessarily. Finally, once all of that is done, now I head off into doing the video editing. And for this, I use a software called HitFilm Express. It's actually a free software that I found for multi-track video and audio editing, and there's a couple of kinks. Sometimes I'll have issues with it. It has crashed on me a couple of times, especially if I'm doing a particularly long project. But I would say 99% of the time it's been very stable and very reliable. And what I do first is I collect all the assets I will need for the edit. This includes 2 images, one of my fedora picture, which I use for the ratings at the end, one for the still image that will sit in on all of the audio only sections. Then I import in the audio clip, which I have now edited and saved as an MP3, and then I import the episode in question, which I have on the hard drive. These are in .avis, and obviously are in a circa 1960s resolution. Now, for an episode that gets a 0, I don't even bother bringing in the Fedora picture, but those are the assets I would normally use. Now, I won't go through the entire operation of how HitFilm works. That's maybe a video for some other time. But the first step, of course, will be to go back through the video now and cut and splice out all of the clips that I have chosen while I was writing the review. And you'll notice I have the Word document open in the background to remind myself of those timestamps. I simply scrum to the appropriate timestamp, and then it's just a couple of snips with the cutting tool to get those clips. Now I have all the video clips I'll need for the episode. The next step, of course, is to now drag my audio into the audio track. I'll make a second audio track for that purpose. And now I'll zoom in on the audio track and find those little 3-second gaps that I left myself when I was doing the audio editing. These are nice visual reminders for me, like I said, and I simply, again, use the cutting tool, snip, snip, and I use that little gap to indicate where the video clip goes. And HitFilm Express, as well as many other video editors, has a really nice snap tool, where once a piece of media hits another piece of media, a red line will appear to indicate that if you go any farther, it'll bleed into the other piece. This is extremely, extremely useful, so that I don't have to keep zooming in and out on the audio and video to make sure that the two aren't overlapping. You'll notice if you've been watching the show for a long time that all of my reviews either have 4 clips or 5 clips. This is simply a matter of preference for the episode. Sometimes I want 4 slightly longer clips, sometimes I'll go for 5 smaller clips, but I've never had more than that, barring a couple of rare examples right near the beginning of this series before I kind of solidified the format. I also try to keep in mind how long it's been since a video clip, since I think that the switch between media of visual and audio is very important to keep an audience's attention. Sometimes this works really well, as you can see for the Fear. This one is very evenly spaced. Other times I'll have a big, huge section of me talking before another clip shows up. Once that's in place, the video and the audio elements, the final element is simply the picture, and this is a very simple, straightforward process. I'll make myself another video track, and now plant in the still image. What I will then do is use the embedded writing tool that is in HitFilms to then write in the information that's pertinent. In this case, all I need is the title. Now the images usually are much larger than I normally require, so first I'll resize the image so that it fits inside the viewing window and matches the resolution of the episode. That keeps it consistent. Otherwise we'd be watching the episode in squinto vision. And then it's simply a matter of copying and pasting the text and the image over each of the sections that are audio only. Then that gives us our visual component for the parts that aren't video clips. Finally, with all of that done, I will zoom in near the end of the episode and put in my fedoras. And then it's simply a matter of placing those Fedora images over top of the main image in a separate video track. If an episode receives more than one Fedora, such as the Fear did, I will simply copy and paste the Fedora image once I've sized it and placed it, so that I don't have to resize them and the images thus are the same size consistently. After that, it's simply a matter of pressing that handy dandy export button. I export them in 1080p, which is the standard YouTube quality that you would find on most videos on that platform. Whether or not they end up going to YouTube, of course. One final note I want to add, to answer probably a big question you have. Does Hattie score the episodes before he writes the review? Yes. In most cases, I already know what the episode is receiving. And like I said, that's because I've seen all of these before. Now, it has happened on occasion, and I have mentioned this, that sometimes upon re-reviewing the episode, in order to grab the clips or to watch again a specific part, I will reevaluate my score. But knowing the score going into the review actually really helps me write. I know what the general theme of the review is. If I'm going to give it a 3 out of 3, then probably the review is going to be about how the episode changed me as a writer, or what the impact narratively or culturally or socially the episode had. If it gets a 2 out of 3, then I'll probably focus on why the episode missed out on that 3. If it gets a 1 out of 3, I'll try to talk about how I would fix the episode to get it up into the good categories. And of course, if it's a 0, those are sometimes the most fun and cathartic reviews for me, because I can just lay into the episode and let it go. That's the making of the Signpost Up Ahead. All in all, I would say it's about a 2-hour process per review. Some reviews write themselves and are so quick and easy, I forget I even wrote them. Other episodes are a real struggle. The biggest struggles are the ones that were only so-so. The mediocre ones are always tougher to write than the really good or really bad. That's just a fact I think any reviewer would agree with. And after the script is written, the entirety of the audio recording, audio editing process, and video editing process takes about 50 to 60 minutes per episode. So that gives you an idea of how much work went into this show. Not to brag or boast, just to let you know the production side of this whole process, because I know that's really interesting to some people. So I hope you found this featurette informative and interesting. I'm the guy who wears a hat. I hope you enjoyed.